Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com, and in this video we're covering the PvE version of Laceration, a Magic Dragonknight DPS build for Elder Scrolls Online, updated for the Thieves Guild. Before you get started, you're going to want to know some things about this build. One, it's a lot of damage, both single target and AoE. It has great self-healing for a magic build and a lot of group utility. The downside, though, it's difficult to play as there's a lot of dots to keep up and maintain, and some of the resource management is harder than other classes. If this still sounds like fun to you, let me show you what we got for the Magic Dragonknight. Before we get started, I want to show you a picture of a parse, a sample parse or damage producing single target blood spawn pull, 30,000 plus DPS. This thing is a juggernaut in terms of damage, but I'm going to show you how to manage your resources a little bit better so you can sustain a lot longer than 40 seconds and still be effective as a DPS and ESO. So let's get started with the skills. Alright, so we're going to briefly explain the skills, show you beating up some mobs here in Hugh's Bane, and then we're going to go through a detailed combat situation where I do my Bloodspawn parse and kind of show you, break it down specifically. So in general terms, let's talk about the skills that I use. So first up, there's a couple different ways you can get the crit bonus, so Inner Light is one of them. Now I swap this on my single target bar for more regen and also for more damage, because it comes with the crit bonus and also 5% more max magic. So if we bar swap to my other Mage's Savagery bar, that's almost 2k, over 2k magic. So that actually makes us do a lot more damage, pushing us to that 40k mark as a Dunmer. So I have that on my front bar. Now I'm using 2 destruction staffs, and I'll show you and kind of explain why, but we gotta have that. Now I'm not using entropy. So structure entropy gives you major sorcery, that's our other buff. And also I'm not using molten armaments. Molten armament is really good, but it's a fully charged heavy attack 40%, and so I'm not doing any of that. And I chose to basically free up a spot on my bar and not use this, even though it's 39 seconds, and basically use spell power potions. Now you can swap that in if you don't want to use spell power potions, because spell power potions are expensive and it's consuming, but that extra spot on our bar is very valuable because there's a lot of really good abilities that we want to use as a Dragonknight. So I'm getting my major sorcery buff from potions, and I'm getting savagery from Inner Light. So like I said, this is pretty much my single target bar. And what it revolves around is placing dots and then whip, molten whip. So basically the slotted bonus is spell damage, weapon damage, increase for your Ardent Flame ability. So you kind of want to have all the Ardent Flame abilities here. It just depends on how you want to do your bar. So there is one that I put on the back bar, Engulfing Flames, and if you find it more advantageous to put it on this bar, you can. As you can see, the damage does go up slightly. But I like Elemental Drain just for my sake and how I specifically play this build. Okay, so Molten Whip, that's the first ability, and that's going to be basically our spammable single target ability. It's not AoE, it's spammable. Now, and for fights like Lord Warden, or if you're doing a trial that requires range, I do slot in Force Pulse. It's not as much damage, but it is the same amount of magic, and it does have a lot more range, so that's very nice. But just so you know, Molten Whip, 8-meter range and all, is the most damage you can possibly have. Okay, so then the other dot, the one that produces the most damage for me right now is Elemental Blockade. The Destruction Staff, with or without the Maelstrom Staff, it's just an absolute juggernaut. It's considered a true damage over time because there is no upfront damage. It's just literally magic damage, boom, elemental damage every second. So double dips in Thaumaturge and Elemental Expert, making it really powerful. So that's kind of what I want to apply first in most situations. And also, it's damage over time, and it's AoE, so it's a really good area effect to put it in before you go into basically a trash bowl. Another added benefit of this is that if we kill mobs with it, we get magic back via the Destruction Expert. So all sorts of reasons to use the Elemental Blockade, whether you have the Maelstrom Staff or not. So typically what I do is I start off combat with an Elemental Drain on the tankiest target. So something that's going to be alive for a long time, and I'll tab target. Reason why is I'm going to rotate, do light/medium attacks, hitting that mob even though it's AoE, I'll still do it so that way I can get some magic back, because Elemental Drain is just fundamental to this build. I tried without it a million times and my magic just gets blown through like crazy. So try your best to Elemental Drain at least one target, usually the tankiest one if you can. While I'm closing the distance, then I put Blockade of Fire when I'm about that 12-meter range. I do a swipe, Burning Embers. It's not the most damage producing effect, but it does have a massive heal. It basically costs nothing, and it does add up to a lot of damage. So you can double swipe it for a lot of health. Like you can see my Veteran No Death Vet Maelstrom Arena build. So basically this is pretty much similar to my Vet No Death Arena build that I have, except some differences on the back bar, which we sacrifice utility and self-healing for just all-out raw damage. So let me show you how to kind of use this. Now we're not going to go to the back bar yet. I'd use a Spell Power Potion to start, or Molten. And I do this. I come in here, light attack, light attack, light attack. So I'm basically light attacking in between every single time. You can see the magic that comes back just by doing that. So make sure you get in the habit of boom, light attack, boom. You can also animation cancel this long animation for Elemental Blockade. And the way to do it is basically click it and almost click block at the exact same time. So bang. See that? So I can do it really easily here when I'm not fighting anyone. It gets a little bit harder when you're fighting other targets. So let's try it again. So what we're going to do Elemental Drain, the tankiest target. They're both the same. Spell Power Potion. I'll just use a potion just so it sounds like it. Blockade, Burning Embers, Whip. So do, light attack, cancel. We're going to reswipe him. He's still in the blockade. Dead. So that combination right there is enough damage that you could get through almost every single dungeon in the game just doing that if it gets too complex for you. So let's add a lot of complexity to this. And it is complex, but it's worth it. So Engulfing Flames, you may want to put this on the front bar because the tooltip will go up since Ardent Flame. We get a bonus. You can put Elemental Drain back here. That's a good idea. But Flames of Oblivion is where I get my major crit on the back bar. And I put it in the 2 slot just because it's easier for me to remember. Now this thing is an absolute juggernaut damage over time effect. Also, it lasts for 15 seconds and it's no longer toggleable. So usually I can start on my back bar, drain, and then blockade, and then just watch the damage here. Blockade's almost a 5k crit. Then Flames of Oblivion was a 7.4 non-crit. That's not even fully buffed. So I'm getting low on health to show you the double swipe with Burning Embers. Bang, 11k self-heal, 2 seconds. And then score you a hit for 12.2k crit. So it's quite powerful. So Flames of Oblivion, 15 seconds. It's basically going to tick 3 times over 15 seconds. Single target, but it's just a massive amount of damage. And then we got Proxy Det. Now the Proxy Detonation can basically double dip into Thaumaturge and its magic damage, which is the same as our Elemental in their champion points. It's a must-have for even Dragonites. So, I mean, even hitting one target fully buffed, this thing can just absolutely murk. So let me actually get my spell power buff up and just show you. So let's just go grab a few mobs here. Remember, the more mobs that are around, the better. Bang. 25k crit on 2 targets. Now, the more mobs around there, the more damage you do. And I've seen, 30,000 crits on my Magic Dragonknight. So make sure to keep that up. A lot of people keep it up single target as well. It gets a little magic intensive in single target fights, so I don't necessarily use it on this build. But if there's 2 mobs or more, you need to maintain it. Okay, it will blow ahead for 8 seconds. So usually the pre-fight rotation I'm doing is Proxy Det, Flames of Oblivion, Elemental Drain, Bar Swap. The other 2 abilities are AoE abilities. One, Draw Essence, which got a little buff, and it gives back magic the second hit. So you're going to inhale. The inhale is where you get your healing, and it actually adds up to quite a bit. The nice thing about it is Burning Embers requires you to use 2 buttons to get a heal. This is just 1. It's not as good as a Sap Nightblade per se, but you can kind of use it like that if you're in an oh crap panic moment. Plus, it does a lot of damage when you exhale, and it's pretty cool to use in PvP in conjunction with Proxy Det and Dawnbreaker of Smiting. And yes, I'm working on a PvP build for this guy. So, you're going to inhale 2 or more targets, and then you're going to do Fire Ring or Impulse. I tried using this build without it and going dual wield, but it just didn't seem to be as effective. This thing does a good dot, damage over time for 10 seconds, hits really hard up front, and it's great for AoE because look at the cost. With reduction in cost 2100, and if someone's running Worm Cults, even better, you can get back more magic than it costs. So if you get a killing blow on 2 or 3 targets with this ability, Elemental Drain's going, that's how you maintain your magic a lot better. So that just took me a while to learn that. I also have Smiting Dawnbreaker on the bar. Very underrated, and you don't have to use this just for Daedra guys. It's really useful because it does a whole lot of damage up front, a good dot that's magic damage, but if it's Undead and Daedra, it does just incredible amount of damage. Plus, our ultimate cost on Standard of Might is 250. It takes a very long time to get that up. So it's just better if you have something in your back bar that can bridge the gap into that. Because if you're in an panic mode, remember that Battle Roar, you know, the best passive in the game, one of them, while activating, you get health back as well. So health, stamina, and magic. So it kind of bridges the gap to this. Okay, so let me show you the Draw Essence healing on a couple mobs. Come here, mobs. Where are you? There's a little penguin. Of course, the one time you don't want... The one time there's no mobs is the one time you want. Oh, there's a croc. Okay. So I'm going to use a Spell Power Potion. Rip my gold, just so you get the full effect. And right here. So that's 6.8k heal. 6.8k heal. 6.8k heal. Now you can further augment this, getting more heal using Igneous Shields with it. So Igneous Shields gives you major mending, increasing your self-healing done by 25% for 7 seconds. So if you hit Igneous Shields and then do a Draw Essence, the more mobs around, the bigger the heal's going to be, and it'll hit 6 targets on the way out. Massive, massive amount of damage. Okay, so the most possible amount of damage you can get is having Eruption on one of these skills. Typically, it's usually Draw Essence I take off for pure damage, but you lose the ability to instant heal, and you're going to be pretty much dependent on a healer in AoE situations. So, if you want absolute more damage, go with Eruption. Yet it's another dot to maintain. It gets kind of tricky, but the amount of damage it does is staggering. Just realize that you're going to be more dependent on a healer. So, your choice. This thing, the way it is very sturdy, high damage producing, but it is pretty dependent on a healer. Also, Spell Power Potions, if you don't want to use those, you can also swap in Molten Armaments here on Draw Essence if you like. But if you're playing solo, you're really going to need Draw Essence in an AoE situation. So, you don't have to use Fire Ring if you don't want. You could basically just maintain Draw Essence, Proxy Det, Elemental Blockade, and do swipes, and you could kill anything AoE. It's just easier to have one button on there to just fire off stuff. Okay, so that is the basic skills. Now I want to go through a new kind of way I want to teach DPS in this game, or skill rotation. So if you like this next segment of the video, please leave me a comment. I want to know if this works, okay? Let's start. Alright, we're going to try something a little different this time, explaining DPS, in particular the parse that I made, the 30,000 DPS parse. So I want to teach you and not just show and brag about it, because ultimately for this build to be successful, you guys have to implement it properly. Okay, so I'm going to start the fight here, and I'm using XSplit to do this. And basically what I'm looking at when I'm starting the fight is, let me draw you a little picture here, is this area. Now I'm using LUI. LUI is a buff system tracker. So for those on consoles, you're not going to be able to look at this. But what this is telling me, where my eyes are going, I have Molten Whip up. That's the first little buff I'm looking at. I have Warhorn going, so that's my huge damage buff. Flames of Oblivion, I'm looking at the seconds. So 14 seconds, I just casted it. And then I have my Minor Berserk combat, and then I have Proxy Det, Spell Power Cure, and that's what I'm maintaining and looking at the very first before the start of the fight. So what this tells me is I don't need to use a Spell Power Potion right now. Why? Well, I have Igneous Weapons and I have it for 30 seconds. So I'm going to save this potion until my magic drops around 78% is usually when it gets up to full from a potion, and you start giving me that regeneration that I need. So this is where my eyes are looking when I'm doing a DPS parse. So let me clear this. And let's get the rotation going. It's kind of complex, so stay with me as best you can. So I'm going to kind of go through this. So I'm going to cast my skills. So very first thing is I cast an eruption while I'm closing the distance. I switch bars and do an engulfing flame. Regardless of what bar you have it, now I put it on the back bar. That's going to get the 10% fire damage increase. So I want that after all my fire has been applied. So there's that. Now I drop a banner, and then I'm going to go Elemental Blockade, which was my 4 key, and then do a Burning Embers swipe. Okay. So now what I'm looking at is my buffs and my rotation. There's a lot of things to pay attention to, but mainly my eye goes from looking at the right screen to looking at this. Okay. So what I'm looking at is Eruption has a longer duration, Burning Embers 10 seconds, Engulfing Flames, and this right here, Blockade. These are the icons that tell you if you need to refresh it. So what my brain is saying right now is, oh, look, I got 1.8 seconds left on Engulfing Flame. I need to bar swap to do that. By that time, and then Blockade's going to be up, Burning Embers, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I'm paying attention to. I already used my potion, so you can see here that my magic went back to max, and that's good. And so I'm also looking right over here. Proxy Debt is about to blow up. And so when I go back to recast Engulfing Flames, you can either cast Proxy Debt or not. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. Now, when I have a second where nothing's going on, that's where I'm doing whips. But it's really hard to pay attention to all this, all that, your movement, the boss's health, stepping in red, and it just takes time. So let's clear the whiteboard and look how it looks. Okay, so Proxy Debt goes off. Burning Embers is getting lower. You can see here I should be practicing, boom, bar swapping. Elemental Blockade, I do a couple whips here. Now Blockade's back up. I got my Burning Embers should be reapplied here. There we go. Eruption's reapplied. And you can see my magic's dipping really, really low. And there's a reason why I'm not using Elemental Drain. So Elemental Drain should be applied at the very beginning of the fight. And if someone else can apply it for you as well, but it would show up on this buff and also over here as well. So Elemental Drain is what I added to this buff rotation after I did this parse, just because look at the magic. See? Very low. Don't have a potion to rely on. And I don't have a banner to rely on as well. And so when I get low like this, what I look at, I know this is kind of John Maddening everything, is this little number here. So Ultimate. Because that's going to tell me once I get to 99, I can use Dawnbreaker Smiting while I'm doing the parse to get a little bit more resources and also a little bit damage on the finishing end of things. Okay, so let's clear that out and continue. So here I am just whipping while I have time when there's no other buffs to be reapplied. And all I'm doing is just going back and reapplying those buffs. So I'm looking at Engulfing Flame. Even though he's at 4 or 5%, I'm still reapplying those buffs. And there we go. My magic ran out, but we got her done. So let's look at that again. Okay, so let's watch it in fast speed here. Pay attention to the right screen where my buffs are. That's going to tell you if I'm doing a good job maintaining my buffs. So Engulfing Flame, got Banner down, Elemental Blockade, I know it's through the line. And then look when I'm reapplying them. So I'm looking for those icons. Eruption's about down, Engulfing's down, right? You need to bar swap, reapply it. Now it's on the left-hand side. Blockade gets 3 more seconds, need to reply it. Now you need to apply Eruption. There we go. See, I'm low on dots now. Get the embers out. Blockade, very good. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice to get this right. Not to mention if there's AoE, maintaining my magic with Elemental Drain. That's another dot at /rotation you're going to need to put in there. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some practice. It's worth it. Dragonknight's not easy, but as you can see, look at that damage. It's a beast. The gear that I'm using is pretty much the standard setup that a lot of Magic Dragonites run. Now, the only difference is a lot of DKs are using the Narioneth Crypt of Hearts 2-piece bonus instead of Valken Scoria. Because it does more damage on some single target parses. However, what I like about Valken Scoria is that the meteor, once it gets called down, it's going to hit the target. the thing with the Lich Crystal and its circles is in highly mobile fights, a lot of targets just miss out on it. So it is probably more damage due to whips, but for my particular build, it was just easier to use Valken Scoria, and it did produce a lot of damage, 1700 in my parse. So that was good enough for me. And I like it. It looks cool, has a good one set bonus, so use it if you want. It's really, really high damage producing. Now, if you don't have Valken Scoria and or you don't have the Flame Staff, there's plenty of combinations of gear that you can use. You can use a 3-piece Magnus, or you can even go dual wield and go a 4-piece Magnus, but you really need a 5-piece of Julianos. So I think Julianos is the best for Magic Dragonknight that's crafted. Now, Scathing Mage, what they get from Veteran Imperial City Prison, is probably the absolute best in slot, though a lot of people aren't going to be able to get that. So I would suggest optimizing your Julianos best you can before you move on to Scathing Mage, because it'll be hard getting it unless you're pulling serious damage. So 5-piece of that. All Divines with the Thief Mundus Stone. I like a lot of crit, so it works for me. Now, if you have a chance to get your staff, go with Sharpened. Or if you're going to create your own, go with Nirnhone. That trade is probably the best. So 2 Nirnhone staffs. Like I said, even a 3-piece Torix pack instead of the helm would be good. And so you can see here I'm at the 40k health mark. So I'm using 5 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy with my Undaunted max to 9. That gets me 40k. 18k health with the set bonus for Valken Scoria and the Undaunted. I'm using Arcane's Jewelry, all spell damage. Now, I have a 501 champion points, so I have a lot. If you're struggling with resources or you're below the champion points, I do not switch to the Thief out of the Thief Mundus Stone. If you need more recovery, I think it's way better just to enchant your jewelry with recovery than changing the Mundus Stone. Remember, Thief and getting crit is hard to do. Getting recovery isn't that hard. So if you need more recovery, enchant your jewelry. But just try 1 first, then 2, then 3. And you'll need more recovery depending on how low your champion points are. Also, if your champion points are below 501, these stats are not going to be the same for you. Remember that the champion point system also adds main stats as well. Each tree does. So if you have this identical gear, it's all legendary, well, you might not hit 40k magic. Also, if you want the absolute most damage out of your character, you need to treat it as such, making it legendary glyphs. You can see all these pieces of gear that I have are completely maxed out, best in slot, except my shoulder. That's it. So, you can do way more damage than me, even with better skills and rotation, but at some point your gear will hold you back if you're using blue, purple, and your enchants are crap, and you don't have the right set bonuses. So, if you want to pick one build and be really good at it, I say practice a lot and really optimize your gear. So when I use a spell power potion, I'm at 3,000 spell damage, but you can get a lot more damage than this if your friend runs spell power cure. So that parse video, my friend was running spell power cure, warhorn, combat prayer, everything you can do to max out your DPS. So that's a fully buffed run. On non-buffed runs, you're looking at 20 to 25,000, depending if we use a banner. So don't get freaked out if you're not doing that much damage. You've got to have a build with other players that optimize it. Speaking of that, I know we're in the gear section, and that's really all I have on the gear. So I'm lacking recovery, but you can do some things with Elemental Drain, like I showed you earlier, right here. And also someone can do something for you, which is Siphon Spirit, the last ability and Restoration Staff. So basically every time you attack a mob, you're getting, that someone casts this on, you're getting health back and 1% magic. 1% max magic adds up, especially if you have Elemental Drain on the target as well. So if you're really still struggling with magic, you can do these orbs right here. Gives you back magic and magic over time. Gives you back a lot. So something to think about if you're making a build centered around group play. So those things will help you get magic a lot faster. But remember, this is mainly for dungeons. If you want to do trials with this, you're probably going to need more recovery. Probably at least 2 pieces of recovery if you're doing vet maul, just because it has such long fights. You want to be able to do whatever content you are by getting back resources using potions, battles roar, so using really high cost ultimate like Dragonknight standard, and then self-sustaining with elemental drain and siphon spirits. If you can do that and last over 2 minutes and kind of always have your magic just fluctuating but never really running out, maybe 1 or 2 heavy attacks, bang, you're good to go. So try that and see what works. Start with 1 recovery, go to 2, go to 3, so on. The other thing you can do, I use the Bystat food, max health, max magic, but if you wanted more recovery, you could do max health and magic recovery. Now you'd lose a lot of damage, but you gain a lot of recovery. So just so you know. Okay, come here, you. Whip. Okay, so another thing about itemization and your character that people don't focus on is alchemy. This is the only thing that gives you a performance boost in crafting. Potions last 30% longer. Deltia, how would that make me be a better Dragonknight? Well, if you look at these little crap potions here, the VR15, they give you magic regeneration for 28 seconds. That's nothing to shy at, and that's why I use potions on cooldown. A lot of people don't use them, they don't know when to use them, they don't know how to use them. So make sure you're using these. If you have a VR1 potion, they're not going to give you as much magic, they're not going to give you as much regeneration. So if we look here at the VR15 big boy spell power potions, look at that. Now that gives you spell damage, spell critical, and your max magic is more, plus the recovery is 47 seconds. Why is that important? Well, 45-second cooldown, it says it right there. So you can basically always have that 20% extra recovery. Another thing to notice, if someone's giving you the buff, you got to know when to use this. So you want to use around 78% magic. So let me just go. So right here, bang, potion. And of course I used the wrong one. So usually I click the button. Usually about 78% it would go back up. So that's really important to know. Big boy potions, the really nice ones, they cost, 8, 10k or whatever they are, a stack of 100. But if you want to be the best, you got to use the best equipment. Another one you can use that's a little bit cheaper is stealth detection. Usually this grants you the major sorcery. Make sure to look at them. Major sorcery. So that's really all we need. We don't need the crit. Plus it gives you the max magic. Stealth detection, it's really handy for PvP. I feel like that stuff. Okay, so that's the gear. Let's talk about the CP. Okay, so I'm using Asari's guide that is found on my website, Tamriel Foundry, and I'll link it in the description. And since I'm doing just PvE with this build right now, I go 100 into position. Why? Because I don't focus a whole lot on recovery, because I have Battle Roar. So that's going to give me back my resources. Using Siphon Spirit, Elemental Drain, those things are going to give me back my resources, so I don't focus so much on recovery. Now, if you're going to enchant your jewelry with 1 or 2 or more recovery glyphs, I would focus more points on here and less in reduced costs. Your call. But I like this setup for pure PvE standpoint. Okay, so this is what Asari said to do. Damage-wise, 95 in Element Expert, 10 in Spell Erosion, 22 in Elfborn, and then the rest here in a Thaumaturge. Now, Thaumaturge does a lot of damage because most of our effects are dots, but the nice thing about this setup is the Arcane Well. Arcane Well at 120 points, this restores a lot of magic for you and your allies. So I have gone over more into Thaumaturge and less in Elemental Expert, but missing this is just, it's too important to give up. So this works well for me. I don't know if it works for you, but I would focus on getting Elemental Expert up. If you're low on champion points, at least getting 30 into this tree first. Pump this up way up, and then Thaumaturge once you've got that Arcane Well. As far as defense, I pretty much do the exact same thing. I don't see a benefit in light armor focus. I don't see spell shield that beneficial. So I just go hardy, elemental defender, thick skinned, basically a 4-way split, and then quick recovery. Now, I do 120 points in here to get Unchained. I'm not using any stamina ability, but I don't know, this setup has always worked for me in VMA and dungeons, so that's kind of what I use. And that is the build. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, race, Mundus stone, all that sort of thing. So race. If you're a Dragon Knight and you want to play Magic, Dunmer is the absolute best. I don't care what anyone says. If they have math to prove me wrong, I love Dunmer till the day I die. Flame resistance, 9% max magic, increases your damage with flame effects by 7. It's just fantastic. You can't go wrong with it. Just don't make them look like this. Now, if you ask me, Deltia, can I play this build as a Khajiit? Absolutely. Are you going to be as effective as a Dunmer with the exact same gear, exact same skills, and exact same skill level? No, you're not. How much different? Maybe 5, 10, 15% at most. So it's up to you. If you like this style of gameplay and you have an orc, play it. I've done both. And if you like the style, it'll be a little bit harder to play, a little bit less resources, max stats, which leads to less damage. But, play what you like. And I highly recommend the Thief Mundus though. I can't tell you how much more damage I do with this. Also, I'm a vampire right now strictly for PvP using Devouring Swarm. I see no benefit in being a vampire in PvE. So it's only a deterrent. So I would not be a vampire or a werewolf for this specific build. Okay, I think that is a build, folks. Thanks again for watching the Laceration build. It took me a while because it was very complicated. I wanted to find something that would work in a lot of different scenarios that was fun, intuitive, and somewhat easy to play as it can get for a Dragon Knight. So please leave me some comments on what you guys think about this, what do you guys use for Dragon Knights, and if you do use this build, how's it working for you? So please, I got some more Dragon Knight stuff coming, PvP build. I got a new video with my Omega Templar soloing vet dungeons for those of you that might want something like that. And then I'll be moving on to the Sorc, Stam, Dragon Knight, and eventually the Nightblade once again. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, share. I love you.